I've got everyone. Hey, going. I'm Phil Tarrant from Smart Property Investment. You probably know me. I've heard my voice on the Smart Property Investment show. I get asked every month to do a bit of a RBA interest rate catch-up update with our friends over at Finni Mortgages, their CEO, Paul Glossop, to get a sense of what's going on. Paul, how are you going? You well?
I'm well, mate. I'm well, and hoping that all the listeners and viewers are maintaining a little bit of dryness in this crazy weather that the East Coast is getting bombarded with once again.
Yeah, once again, who would have thought another once in 100-year flood within a couple of months of the last one? And as a
couple of
landowner,
months after the last one.
as a landowner, I've seen it firsthand over the last couple of days. I'm back in Sydney now, but all very interesting. And Paul, you're not in Sydney. You're we're recording this in the morning here in Australia, but it seems as though it's still daylight where you are. Where are you in the world?
It's still bright and not so early. It's about 9 p.m. here in just a little bit south of Toronto. I've actually just flown in from Calgary. So spent about a week traveling across the Rockies and getting to see what the beautiful sides of Canada have got on offer for this time of year.
Oh, mate, it's a beautiful country to travel in. I've spent my time there as a younger man. But Paul, I'm sure you've seen the news, another 50 basis point increase to the official cash rate here on top of the last 50 basis points, which were on top of the initial ratcheting of interest rates back in May, 25 basis points. So we're on the way up. We've been chatting about it. What's the global view of all these interest rates, mate?
Yeah, mate, that's the theme that's quite an interesting one. I think that's something that we're seeing play out, certainly this year, and it was the theme that was the discussions earlier in the year. And I think the reality is that if you look through the Western world, essentially North America is over towards Europe, mate. It's happening pretty much simultaneously across the globe at the moment. We're seeing this ratcheting up quite quickly of interest rates. It's something that hasn't been seen since essentially where things were happening back and forth of the GFC and then sort of further back before the dot-com boom. But it's happening everywhere. I'm looking at prices across Canada of money, prices across the USA of money, and essentially they're seeing coming off their historic lows and ratcheting up quickly, and obviously trying to taper off this inflationary position that we're seeing, which is having its desired effect. For the housing market, at least, it's starting to see it cool off, and consumption starting to abate a little bit. And I think we've probably still got another 6 to 12 months of this before we start seeing the next phase of this monetary policy.
So is it going to be the speed of it going up is going to be the speed of it coming down, or it's going to go up and stay? What's the view here in Australia?
And that's the one, is that I think we've got to realize that, the reason why this is happening now is that we want to curtail what's going to happen in the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months. And the reality is similar to exactly what's happening over here in Canada and the US. Is the reality is we're going to see this ratchet up probably on a monthly basis. We're pretty much seeing the central banks of Canada, central banks of the US, central banks of numerous countries across Europe, obviously Australia, New Zealand, and the like, are seeing more or less a monthly increase now. So we expect that this will probably play out there or thereabouts for the next 4 to 6 months. We might see a couple of months where they'll look to see a bit more of what has been the output or the outcome of these interest rate hikes. But one thing that is now starting to see it priced in, I read a good article from Chris Joy only this morning, basically speaking of what's now being priced in the yield markets, is now seeing that probably by about April to July 2023, the markets are now starting to price in the first cut in interest rates, believe it or not.
Well, that's maybe a bit of a reprieve for mortgage holders. We spoke about this last time. A lot of people have taken on debt over the last couple of years on the basis of what the RBA was saying, that there would be no interest rate hikes in 2024. Well, it's happening right now. Get used to it. It's going to continue, as Paul mentioned. What do you do about all this? Because I know there's a lot of shock to people with mortgages right across Australia. I think a third of all Australians have mortgages. It's a significant amount of people. Third of the other Australians own their houses outright, and the other third are all renters, which is good for property investors, obviously. What do you do about all this? Is there any way to combat it? Is there any opportunities there, mate?
Yeah, mate, and you're exactly right. I think you put things in perspective with those numbers really, really quickly. Is that you've got to remember this is a third of essentially all Australians right now we're talking about, and then the other third are the ones who are actually paying more on the rents. But if I'm looking at it as essentially as both property owners and property homeowners, as well as investors, you and I and much of our audience, the reality is this is the time for people to get busy with getting full knowledge of their interest rates, their setups of their accounts, and essentially what other banks are offering. And it's two things, one of which is making sure that you know what you're paying, and is that where the market should be for your equivalent interest rate with your LVR, with your incomes and all the other things that are attached to it. And the second part is that as much as we talk about interest rates going up, the cost of money going up, the cost of holding your assets going up, or more often than not, you're going to find anyone who's held a property who's listening to this, who's held that asset for more than probably 18 months, will have a fair chunk of equity in that exact same property. So not only is this a very, very important time to start thinking about getting your money as cheap as it possibly can in the best and most liquid structure, but getting that actual equity out of that so you can actually have that available. Because one thing that you and I know, as well as probably any other seasoned investor that sits out there, is that these short timeframes that we're going through right now, i.e. probably a 6, 12, 18, possibly 24 months worth of disruption to the property market, it's going to spell huge opportunity. I personally am spending and have spent over the last 6 months a fair whack of my own time getting money out of assets to get them ready to go so I can keep building and manufacturing equity in my own portfolio. And I'm assuming you're in a pretty similar position, Phil.
I'm at it as well. And counter-cyclical investing, whatever you want to call it, there's, everyone's heard this Warren Buffett sort of quote around it, as in be fearful when everyone's greedy and be, opportunistic when everyone is fearful, right? We're sort of I've probably made a meal of that, but you know what I mean by that. It's get stuck in, and if you have the confidence to invest right now or buy property or transact, go up, down, left or right with your owner occupier, there's opportunities in market. So how are you finding with your team over at Finni Mortgages, Paul? Are they inundated at the moment? There are a lot of people sort of looking to capitalize on this environment, or at least free up equity so they can strike when the time is right?
Yeah, it's a combination of those two things. Plus, there is definitely quite a number of investors that we're working with now who are not only saying, "Hey, look, those essentially those variable rates I was probably on 2 or 3, 4 years ago, that got a bit lazy as this going through this increase of this money market. We need to shop that, get that done better." So a lot of the team's time is spent refinancing, repricing the existing debts to much sharper variable rates, at the same time releasing equity. And a lot of those same investors are saying, well, hey, there's probably a little bit less competition in a lot of the markets that I'm interested in for the next 5, 7, 8, 10 years. So now is not only the time to refinance, extract equity, but get that money into those markets. And they not necessarily are those markets of Sydney, Melbourne, and some of those other areas which are probably seeing the start of this downturn. There's definitely markets which are still on the up and up, and that will continue to play out over the next 5 years.
Yeah, and for all of our viewers out there watching this over social channels, we'll also run this on Smart Property Investment to all our Smart Property Investment listeners. Paul, I know they're asking me to ask you this question. Okay, that's all good. Fact, interest rates are going to continue to go up. Okay, I got it. No worries. I'll plan around that. What's the one thing that you must do today if you're a property investor to help you down the pathway of capitalizing on this market that we're moving into or currently in?
Yeah, for me, the big one is think 5 years. And this is the big one that I think anyone who's thinking about what to do with their money or what to do with their overall property portfolio right now, if you're hearing nothing but doom and gloom, take that opportunity to think, okay, I'm not buying for an outcome in 6 or 12 months. I'm buying for that outcome in 5, in 10, in 15 years. So if I'm setting a barometer as to the minimum horizon that you're considering, invest for what you're expecting in 5 years or 7 years, something in that first time frame. Because if you're buying and selling, for that matter, for what you think is going to happen in the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months, take that emotion off the table, because the reality is you're going to see headlines that'll come left, right, and center, which aren't going to look great. Some will look actually tremendous, but don't invest for what's happening now. Invest for 5, invest for 7 years as a minimum.
Okay, there you have it. Not bad counsel there from Paul Glossop. He's the CEO over at Finni Mortgages. Finni.com.au, I think, is the website, Paul, if anyone wants to chat about lending options, what they do about it. Your brokers are happy to chat through that stuff. Yeah,
absolutely, mate. finni.com.au. The brokers are there essentially 24/7. So if anyone wants to drop a line, they can call up, leave a message if they are calling actually 24/7, i.e. 2 in the morning or 9 in the evening, like I am right now. If you don't get in someone, leave your details and I'll guarantee you they'll get back to you the very first thing the next day. But we're here to essentially work with those investors who are looking to refinance, extract equity, and prepare for that next 5 years.
All right, there you go. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate your time. I know it's getting late over there in Canada. Have some fun. I know it's summer out there. It's winter here, and we're still copping that big East Coast low. So no doubt all the headlines everyone's reading now amongst property is, again, those flood markets. So if you are investing in property, remember 1 in 100-year floods happen a lot more than 1 in 100 years. So be quite shrewd in how you go about looking for properties that were investable asset outside of flood zones. I'm Phil Tarrant, host of the Smart Property Investment Show. Again, it's our monthly update, RBA. We do it with our friends over at Finni Mortgages. I hope you're well. Remember, get in touch if you want to tune in. Anything, smartpropertyinvestment.com.au. We'll see you again next time. Until then, bye-bye.